Hello everyone. I'll try and keep this short and run through it quickly. I'll be presenting today the campus planning projects in India and basically extracting some information from the article written by Professor Banerjee in the issue of urban design. Okay, initially I'll touch base on the roots of campus planning, how they've evolved in India, then go on to give a few historic examples. Then I'll touch on some colonial influences of planning and architecture that have influenced some campus planning projects in India. Moving on to post-independence scenario, when India was looking at setting up its own identity and what sort of changes and policies were coming up then, and what impact again it had on campus planning. Then I'll touch base on some case studies and give a short critique on as to what features and factors we can look at those case studies and which will inform the current campus planning different projects in India. The next thing that I would discuss is the current scope of campus planning, why it is so important and why it has an important place in urban design in India, unlike other countries probably. And then I'll just touch base on some related developments, not essentially institutional campus planning, but some other sort of campus planning, say corporate or industrial for that matter. This is an image of the oldest university in the world. It's called Taxila. Essentially, these universities were called Gurukuls. Gurukul is a Sanskrit word, Guru meaning teacher and Kula meaning family. So Gurukul essentially is a place where the teachers and the students live together in an environment, live as a family. And it is a community where students would actually spend a lot of years of their life till the teacher passes on his teachings to them. So this has, the word Gurukul is mentioned in the Vedas, which goes back long time, in the BC even. So we're looking at the plan of Taxila, which is the oldest university, as I mentioned. It was set up in an urban environment, and the students and faculties, they all stayed together in close courtyard areas, which was an essential theme of the public realm in this particular plan. The second university here is the University of Nalanda. Again, a very, very old university set up by the king Ashoka, who was really a Buddhist. And this is a Buddhist university which housed about 3,000 monks. And as you can see, the main sort of concept that runs in this plan is the linear street and all the community activities gathered around it. Landscaping as well played an important part of this master plan, although it's not seen in the figure ground. Moving on to the colonial times, we're looking at the cities of Calcutta, Madras, Mumbai and Delhi, which are mentioned time and again as representing the colonial times and the peak period of architecture and planning of the British era. Now, obviously, this had a major impact on the campus plannings in those times. And one of the examples is the Stephens College in New Delhi. You could see that there were arcades and towers as landmarks, closed courtyards, and these elements which were used similar to the British universities probably found in Britain itself. So these are some of the examples. Now, what really happened after post-independence in 1947 is, as I mentioned, India was trying to sort of set up its own identity and didn't want to reflect on any of the British planning on our architecture, which was there previously. So they did import some concepts from the US, and that was one part of it. But some of the concepts came from Chandigarh, as Noah mentioned as well, where French urbanists and architects were coming down to India, invited by the Prime Minister himself to set up a new city. So we were looking at total no regards to the British architecture or the learnings from it, was just starting afresh entirely. So this essentially is a development control plan of, say, any city or town in India. And it just gives you the zoning areas of residential and commercial and industrial, which is very, very rigid, but also it doesn't give enough detail for any set of planning to be done on ground in terms of the building heights and the three dimension of it at all. Now this sort of gives an idea of the planning and influence that would be taking place post-independence in the towns as well as in the campus planning. So essentially what happened is in the 1950s, there was a lot of emergence of new institutions in agriculture, in management, and in technology. So pre-independence, there were about 19 universities. I'm talking about areas up to 500 acres, 600 acres even, which housed these students' villages. But today we have 400 universities in India. So obviously there has been a long tradition of campus planning since then. So post-independence, the planners obviously had a lot to do with planning of institutions even, which probably they were not fully qualified to do in the sense of thinking in third dimension at all. So we do see a lot of segregation of functions and very stark zoning given in the campus plans. You can see a clear reflection in this particular plan. This is the Institute of Technology in Kharagpur, which was set up in 1950s, the first big university set up in India, spread over 1,000 acres of land. Now, it can be clearly seen that the residential areas through the building footprints and the administrative areas, probably the academic areas, they all set out in different zones. And there is no relation to the streets whatsoever. And also, this particular piece of land is in a marshy area. And there were no environmental constraints. Unfortunately, since this plan was, there wasn't a formal master plan for the entire area. So the development that was happening time and again didn't have relation to the previous developments at all. So which was a downside, although it's a renowned university and there are many good students coming out of it, but this is the sort of scenario that we're looking at in those times. Now, this plan is quite familiar, as Noah mentioned as well. It's the plan of Chandigarh, but done by Le Corbusier, and the building footprints can be clearly seen how modernist they are and the sort of layout they propose and the blocks. What I would like to draw your attention towards is the building footprints basically within one block. And if you have a clear image of that, then you can probably see the relation to this sort of plan that has come out of it and has been inspired through the principles of modernism in those times. So this particular plan is the Punjab University. The buildings are fantastic. They are out of the times in which they were built. They were very iconic, but they were stark. They still and they lack human scale. And plus, the functions are segregated. So there are certain lessons to be learned. Although the buildings and the architecture is very good, or the planning is not done as much well as much. Whereas this city, Gandhinagar, was inspired from Chandigarh and was built much later in 1965 when the Mumbai state was sort of divided into two parts and a new capital was set up there called Gandhinagar, and it took some lessons from the Chandigarh plan. But what it did is that the streets, the widths, and the dense factor of the density was more, and it was more sensitive towards the climate. You can see the streets are sort of inclined towards the northeast, while if you go to Chandigarh, the stark rays of the sun would hit you immediately at a certain point of time in the evening, which doesn't really happen in this. So the lessons were learned in those ways. Moving on to certain other campuses, the UPAC campus plan. Essentially very strong geometry, no relation to the streets again, very large building footprints. And again, the main problem here, from what we can learn from this, is the phasing wasn't planned for. There was not enough place for future growth. And there are many universities in India who would like to expand now because there is a demand for it, but unfortunately, because it wasn't planned, this is the situation. We do have certain good examples as well to refer to. This particular campus was done by Louis I. Khan in Ahmedabad. And in these times, basically, what was happening is the architect himself would do the master plan. So he had as a clear vision as to what he wanted to do through the master plan and turn it on to the architecture as well. So there is a common language from the plan transforming to the three dimension. Although, I mean, there are different views of it. Some might say it's monotonous. But again, for a campus plan, it's trying to sort of project an image. And this is exactly what this plan did. It had a clear sense of common material, exposed brickwork, and the extension of it was, however, done in form-finished concrete, which was in those times the architecture that was being practiced. But it does give out certain good principles of urban design in terms of flexible spaces, which could be used by different departments. We also have courtyards, arcades. These small little characteristics which define the campus could be used any other place and help improve the institution design. This is another good example, the Indian Institute of Technology in Kanpur, done by architect Achyut Kanvinde. The main thing you could see is it has a core and central area which is dense. So again, as I had mentioned in the campuses before, huge amount of area and sort of spread out. But this particular campus tried to have a close-knit fabric and also had a good landscape plan and relation to the external and internal spaces. And most importantly, it had enough room for expansion, which can be clearly seen in the site. So what do we learn from all these campus planning different case studies? Basically, the good thing that we can extract from them from the urban design perspective is interlocking exclusive zones into mixed-use clusters, placing community buildings along pedestrian spines, incorporating shading devices such as arcades and covered walkways, encouraging common and flexible functional areas. What it is in the initial times there was a lot of zoning happening. So all the departments, institutional departments would be divided. Again, the residential areas would be divided into male and female, faculty and students. So there was a lot of division. And for that matter, there wasn't enough flexible space that was coming through, wherein there would be more activity through the day and night. Again, some of the examples have demonstrated how a tighter fabric and a dense core could be a better example of an institutional plan. Also creating a relationship with the external and internal spaces, courtyards, arcades, again, as transitional spaces between covered, semi-covered, and open. Also promoting human-scale developments, phasing out and planning for the future, improving connectivity and interaction with the wider urban context. This particular point is important because most of these campuses, the big ones, the Indian Institute of IITs, which I will talk about later, are set up quite away from the city because they need that amount of land. So they're sort of not very well connected to the city. So this interaction of the students with the city dwellers is not as high unless someone makes an effort to actually go and visit the campus. Also, they are very safeguarded because they are students and they want to be in this atmosphere where they focus on academics. But unfortunately, there isn't enough interaction which could be looked into. Okay, I'm going to be talking about the Indian Institute of Technology more in depth here, simply because it sort of defines the current scope of institutional planning in India. Why is it important? Indian Institute of Technologies are government institutes which were set up in, say, the 1950s and 60s. And it's only there were only about 8 of these institutes all over India. And it's only in March 2011 that the government has passed a resolution to have 9 more universities in India and also expand the capacities of the existing ones. So this throws open a big opportunity to have all these campus planning institutes all over India and set up an example of good urban design and planning and learn from the past examples. Also, the couple of other things that are happening currently are large number of developers are getting into setting up campuses because it is deemed as a good investment opportunity. So you'll find loads of very big companies such as Wipros and Tata setting up their own institutions, and up to the range of about 4,000 to 5,000 students even in one campus. And the third area where university campuses are growing are through collaborations with universities abroad. So certain universities in the UK or the US are setting up campuses in India. So again, there's a big market which is emerging, which has not been seen in the last 50 years probably. Another area of probable scope is the expansion of the current universities. This particular example is the Indian Institute of Management in Kolkata, and this institute is basically for a management course for postgrads and above. But it has decided to double its capacity. So the government already has a lot of funds in its coffers to sort of fund this sort of development. So previously the plan was segregated, but now there's an opportunity to integrate the existing plans and also come up with ideas such as plazas and courtyards and public realm as such for the students and integrate this into the campus plan. This example is of a private developer, as I said, Azim Premji University in Bangalore, by the Wipro industry. So again, an example of a private developer having a land of 77 acres. And he started off this institute in Bangalore, which has a density of 585 persons per hectare. So we're looking at 22,000 students actually studying in this campus. So there is a lot of scope, and the scale of it is unimaginable. So I think that it is an opportunity, although urban design and planning have not been as integrated in the past. There is an opportunity to do it now. Just taking you ahead to another sort of campus planning that I can introduce here is special economic zones. The term special economic zones actually originated in China, and then it was introduced in India in the year 2000. Basically, these zones are economic zones where the economic laws are more liberal, and they are set up to attract foreign investments. So there are about 133 of these zones already in India, and about more than 350 zones approved from 2008 onwards. So again, these sort of zones have industrial areas and housing all combined together in big areas of land put forth by private developers. So private developers would come up with a scheme and propose that to the government. The government has a body to sort of approve it in a faster medium, not going through the conventional path of the municipality and the corporations as such. So again, another big opportunity for institutional planning in India. So just summing up the campus planning projects in India, I think they are very symbolic because they set a precedent for current urban design interventions. And students and architects and professionals do look up to them to find some examples and learn from them and implement them in other projects which are not as glamorous. And also, I think they are an important part of our urban design and architectural educational curriculum, where students are encouraged to think about campus planning. As mentioned in Ripin's article in the journal as well, about the government's climate mission of sustainable developments. Now, I've read through some of the briefs of the Indian Institute of Technology, the new ones that are coming up. And the government has clearly specified that they would like a sustainable development, and the criteria are very strict now. They also have a criteria of phasing up to 75 years, which is quite unlikely in the previous plans. So obviously the government has learned from it and setting up a brief to inform good urban design and planning. Also, I think it's a fantastic opportunity to explore greenfield development in an urban area. I mean, it's very hard to find such huge pieces of land given to you and, for experimentation. So again, a great opportunity. Yeah. Thank you for your time.